Webinars aren't just a place to showcase your teaching style and aren't just a place to help your students believe in their abilities. They're an incredible tool for building your email list too. So when people sign up for your free webinar, they're joining your email list, whether they buy or not. They might not buy on that webinar. They might not buy after your webinar, but the next time you launch it, they're more likely to buy. So webinars are a surefire way to quickly grow your email list. I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Welcome back to Online Marketing Made Easy. I'm your host, Amy Porterfield. And if you are new here, welcome, my friend. I'm so glad you found this podcast. And if you're an OG, I'm so glad you keep coming back. I know you have a lot of options for marketing podcasts, so it means the world to me that you are here time and time again. Okay, so I want to start today's episode by talking about a challenging aspect of online business, and that is selling anything online. Your courses, your memberships, your masterminds, your coaching, whatever it might be. Selling online is something that most people struggle with, especially in the beginning. But another thing that I see kind of to add to that challenge is solely relying on a website's sales page to sell whatever it is you're selling. So thinking that because you have a sales page, that is enough and you should be getting sales. You're posting online, on social about it, maybe even you're running ads, but you're running them directly to a sales page. That's where we need to talk about that being a challenge and what you really need to do instead in order to see more sales come through on a regular basis. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking a good sales page. I use sales pages with everything I sell online. And when done well, it can showcase your brand's personality and offer incredible value to guide your future customers toward a solution that can change their lives. Now, in fact, I recently did an episode. It was episode 645 called How to Message Your Digital Product or Service to Instantly Sell. So if you're looking to up-level your sales page, definitely check out that episode, amyporterfield.com/645. But here's the thing. I've seen that even after scrolling through some of the best sales pages online, many people are left feeling a bit, and like uninspired to take action. And I believe the missing piece is often a face-to-face personal touch. So the question now becomes, how do we achieve this in our online businesses? And my answer is simple, with one of my very favorite tools that is alive and well and kicking, and that is a well-crafted webinar. The reason I'm calling it a tool here is because a well-crafted webinar is a blend of a marketing strategy for your business and valuable content for your audience all rolled up into one. Unlike a static sales page, a webinar, also called a masterclass, sometimes called a workshop, I call it a webinar, it creates an engaging, interactive environment. It's like bringing your sales page to life and transforming it into a dynamic conversation that fosters trust and excitement. Over the years, I've seen a significant increase in course enrollments when people are guided through a webinar before being invited to check out my sales page. To me, that is the perfect combination. So what we're talking about here today isn't just a hunch. It's backed by hard data from my business and thousands of my students who have created digital courses and sold those courses through webinars. So this isn't just true for me. I've seen remarkable success stories from my students who use webinars. And some of these students don't even have websites and are running the marketing side of a six-figure launch with just a registration page for a webinar, a compelling webinar, and an email service provider to send out emails after the webinar directly to a sales page. But the big secret sauce there is that webinar. What's more, webinars aren't just a place to showcase your teaching style and aren't just a place to help your students believe in their abilities. They're an incredible tool for building your email list too. So when people sign up for your free webinar, they're joining your email list, whether they buy or not. They might not buy on that webinar. They might not buy after your webinar, but the next time you launch it, they're more likely to buy. So webinars are a surefire way to quickly grow your email list. Did you hear me on that? If you're multitasking already, I'm going to repeat it. Webinars are a surefire way to grow your email list quickly. So today I'm going to present some of my best preparation strategies for creating and executing a valuable and profitable webinar. And to help you put these strategies into action, I've compiled everything into a handy dandy free guide. It's called my Webinar Blueprint, a step-by-step guide from promise to promotion. It's like your personal cheat sheet for everything that we're going to cover today, so you don't even need to take notes. So to get your hands on this, go to amyporterfield.com/659, and you'll see a link to download it in my show notes, amyporterfield.com/659. And as I present these strategies, I want you to keep an open mind so you can rethink webinars and their place in your business. Rather than seeing them as daunting sales pitches, view them as relaxed, enjoyable conversations with potential students and customers. This mindset shift can make webinars less intimidating, more valuable, and ultimately more fun for both you and your audience. And some of the best news here is that in my 15 years of hosting live webinars, I've seen that a well-executed one doesn't mean a painful creation process is ahead of you. When you know your customers well and you keep a mindset of service as the main goal, a webinar simply becomes a conversation where you're sharing your knowledge and motivating people to take action on their goals. Every time before I do a live webinar, I say, no matter if they buy or not, they walk away feeling excited, inspired, and driven to take action. No matter if they buy or not, they're walking away feeling excited, inspired, and driven to take action. That way I know that I'm in a place of service, not a place of, I hope they buy, I need to sell hard. That never is on my mind when I do a webinar, and I think it makes a huge difference. I'm excited for this episode because webinars are where I've pushed my boundaries, overcome challenges, and emerged stronger as an entrepreneur over the years. I faced tech challenge after tech challenge, and I talked to empty rooms before, but I persevered. These experiences have built my resilience and my confidence. They've shown me that I have what it takes to survive in the online business world. So are you ready to prepare and deliver a high converting and impactful webinar and build your confidence along the way? I don't want you to miss that message right there. Webinars can build your confidence. You're going to show up live. You're going to roll with the punches. You're going to be confident in your messaging. It changes who you are as an entrepreneur. All right. So head on over to amyporterfield.com/659. Download my webinar blueprint, a step-by-step guide from promise to promotion, and let's get started with this episode. So first, a little background. My journey with webinars goes way back to the beginning of my business when I first started offering digital courses. So after seeing the success of selling my very first course about social media through the power of webinars, I created a wildly successful course called Webinars That Convert. Now, I've since retired that program and I offer a comprehensive webinar module in my signature course, Digital Course Academy. So for those of you who have DCA, Module 5, every single thing you need to know about webinars, from creating the webinar to making sure that it absolutely converts, to what topic to put in the webinar, to how to fill up a webinar to make sure there's actually people that are there, how to increase your show up rate at a webinar, what to do after a webinar to follow up with all the people that were on the webinar who didn't buy and all the people that signed up for the webinar but didn't show up. I mean, everything you need to know about a high converting webinar is in Module 5 of DCA. However, in this episode, we're going to talk about how to prepare for a webinar to ensure that that webinar goes off without a hitch. Now, if you've been tuning in to my content for a while, you probably already have a hint about what I'm going to say regarding the first crucial step to webinar success. That it all starts with an intimate understanding of your ideal customer avatar, or your ICA. Now, knowing what your ICA desires and the pain points they're trying to avoid in life is so important before you solidify a webinar topic or make a single slide for your webinar. This is because it helps you know how to communicate your solution to them. So the first step I want you to take as you prepare for your webinar is to reflect on why someone would actually want to attend this webinar that you're creating. Consider their desires, the challenges they're trying to overcome, and their motivations in life. Spend at least 30 minutes brainstorming here. Now, this exercise is setting you up to easily meet your ideal customer avatar where they're at, and it helps you enter the conversation going on in their mind. That conversation is almost always, how is spending time watching this webinar going to help me? It's as simple as that. So your goal is to provide them with an answer to this question through an irresistible webinar topic that offers your ideal customer avatar a bridge to their dream life. You do this by choosing a topic that provides a solution to their current problems. We're talking about the webinar, not what you're selling. We'll get there. But for the webinar topic, you want to provide a solution in that webinar to their current problems, where they are right now. And once you've spent some time to get clear here, I want you to take the ideas that you brainstormed along with your topic and turn them into a concise webinar promise. Now, I want to take a beat for a second here and just make sure that you are aware that when you come up with a webinar topic, it needs to align with whatever you're selling on that webinar so that you can say, maybe you're not going to say it like this, but it's basically the underlying message is, if you loved this webinar and you're excited to do XYZ, then I have, let's say, a digital course to teach you step by step how to do it so that you can get the results you're after. So a lot of times your webinar is a nice mix of what it's about, why it matters, and a little how to, just to pique their interest and make them know that what you're going to teach them is doable. So there's some what, why, and a little bit of how in a webinar, but whatever you're selling them typically is how to get the results that they're after. So for Digital Course Academy, in my webinar, I might create a webinar of how to get started with creating a digital course that can make you money all year long. So I give them the first steps of what it looks like to get started so it feels doable. They start coming up with decisions based on how they're going to get started with their course, what their course is about, all of that. And then I sell Digital Course Academy and say, okay, if you're excited about creating your course, you've got some ideas now, you're making some decisions. Now it's time to go step by step in creating and launching your course, and that's in Digital Course Academy. So the two have to be aligned. They have to make sense, because if they don't, then selling becomes really awkward on a webinar. So just something to think about. Now, getting back, because I got off on a little tangent there, I mentioned that you're going to create a concise webinar promise. So here's an example of my webinar promise for my last course launch at Digital Course Academy. So I want to give you like a concrete example. This is what I kept in mind when developing the teaching points and the marketing for the actual webinar. It allowed me to keep what was most important to my ideal customer avatar front and center. So my webinar promise went something like this. In this webinar, you're going to unlock the secrets of creating and launching a successful digital course. I'll show you the path from the frustrating cycle of barely making money online to a world where expanding your profits and growing your audience feels almost effortless. Rest assured, I'll be there to guide you at every step. So this promise keeps in mind the pain point I was leading people away from, which was the frustrating cycle of barely making money online, and toward what they desire most, someone to guide them step by step so the process is effective and effortless. Now, I'm not going to give every single step they need to know to create and launch a course, but I'm going to give them the initial steps to get started and then show them the big picture with Digital Course Academy. I want to note here that I didn't just guess at this promise for the webinar. A lot of research went into understanding my ideal customer avatar before solidifying it. So if you feel like you're at a point where you don't know what your ICA's biggest pain points and desires are, I want you to head over to episode 280. It's an oldie but a goodie, and it still 100% applies. And it's called How to Do a Course Call to Validate Your Digital Course Idea. Once you understand who your audience is and what they need, and you come up with your digital course idea, you can then back up even more to come up with your webinar idea that is aligned with your digital course idea. So again, while that title, How to Do a Course Call to Validate Your Digital Course Idea, while that title is about validating a course idea, the concepts in the episode will help you validate even what to do on a webinar. You'll get ideas for your webinar and for your course. So all you need to do is go to amyporterfield.com/280. Maybe you write that down. Don't go there now, but amyporterfield.com/280. That episode will very much complement this one as well. Now, I cannot stress this enough. You want to dedicate time to get crystal clear on what your ideal customer wants and your webinar's promise, what that is, before moving on to anything else. When you do this, the rest of your webinar creation process becomes a whole lot easier. All right, so once you have your webinar's promise in mind, let's talk about structuring your webinar. I've developed a signature framework with 3 phrases to help guide you through this part. The phases are the possibility, the path, and the promotion. So the first phase, the possibility, is about leading attendees toward a new mindset shift or a new understanding or a new decision they're going to make, all aligned, of course, with your offer. Your webinar promise is strongly linked to the possibility that you're presenting in your offer down the road. Now, in the path phase, you'll be teaching and providing genuine value to your ICA. Remember, no matter if they buy or not, they need to walk away feeling excited, inspired, and driven to take action. We all know that the worst webinar is they make all these promises, you show up, you put your precious time into watching this webinar, and it feels like a big sales pitch, and you didn't learn anything. That will never happen on one of my webinars, and hopefully none of my students do that as well, because if the first part is the possibility, painting the picture of what's possible for them, the big chunk of your webinar is the path where you're going to teach. So either 3 to 4, let's say, pillars of content, which can be thought as like steps or the secrets to unlock XYZ or strategies to help them reframe any current beliefs or really look at something different. So you're guiding them to take baby steps and helping them get into action with the new possibility that you introduced. So the reason why people walk away from my webinars, even if they don't buy, feeling as though they got value is because I'm showing them a path and I'm really explaining it, giving examples, giving case studies. So at the end of a webinar, whether they buy from me or not, they have a new understanding that they can take and build off of. That part's important to me. And then finally, the promotion phase. This is where you detail the benefits of your offer, not all the features. You don't have to get into how many videos and PDFs. And we're not talking features of your course. We're talking about the benefits. Your goal is to present something so compelling that your attendees can't refuse. Your offer should show your attendees how your product or service is perfectly aligned with their needs or desires. So you're going to promote by really explaining the benefits. What will life look like for them once they've gone through your course? And don't worry, let's say you're teaching knitting. You're going to teach this knitting strategy in your webinar, and then you've got this whole comprehensive how to knit XYZ in your course. Sometimes people think like, that's not going to change their life, Amy. I'm not going to like give them a huge transformation. That does not matter. When I say that you're going to create a webinar that's aligned with their desires, they might just have a desire for a new hobby, to learn something new, to take something that they've been doing to the next level, whatever that might be. Many of my students sell courses and memberships around hobbies, and they are thriving. So don't get in your head like, but my product doesn't change lives. We don't have to change lives to like the 100th degree in order to make an impact. So whatever it is you're doing is good. Let's just stay there. Let's not get in our heads. Is it important enough? Is it transformative enough? Let's not even go there. Okay. So to prepare for the structure of your webinar, decide on what this either new mindset shift is going to be, or a new understanding, or a decision they need to make, or something that there's a shift that's going to happen. It's easy just to look at it as a new understanding, a new way. And that's where you're going to send them down that possibility phase. And then you're going to decide on 3 or 4 steps, strategies, pillars, secrets, myths, mistakes, whatever it is. But you're going to have some kind of framework where you're going to teach them something so that no matter if they walk away, whether they've bought or not, they're going to feel as though they are inspired and they have a new understanding. This is the path phase. And then these 2 phases will make up the bulk of your webinar and should take about 45 minutes. I have this little secret I teach in Digital Course Academy where I tell my students, get to the pitch in 45 minutes. And this doesn't always happen perfectly, but just make it an intention, because even if your webinar is an hour and a half, which mine are usually an hour and a half or 2 hours, most people will give me an hour of their time. And so if they're giving me an hour of their time, I need at least the last 15 minutes of their focus to be about pitching my product. So at 45 minutes, I'm moving into the pitch. I think that's really important. I have one of my students said, oh my gosh, Amy, I would take like an hour and a half to get to the pitch. And the minute I changed that and got to it at 45 minutes, my sales instantly increased. And I've seen it over and over again. So it's important. Okay, so to prepare for the promotional phase, I want you to keep your webinar promise in mind. And remember that you're simply having a conversation and inviting someone to take action on what they want in their life. And just a quick reminder, no need to stress about remembering every little detail here, because remember, I've got a freebie for you for this episode. It's called My Webinar Blueprint, a step-by-step guide from promise to promotion. Now, those phases make more sense, right? Promise, possibility, promotion. So it's all about making this framework actionable and manageable for you. And I detailed it all out in this guide. So the next time you do a webinar, just take out the guide. It's amyporterfield.com/659. That will take you to my show notes and you'll see an option to download it. Okay, so now that you have your possibility, your path, and promotional phases solidified, you have the framework for your webinar, which brings us to discuss the next presentation phase, crafting your slides. So in this phase, I want you to keep in mind that less is more. While you'll want to create about 80 slides for an hour-long webinar, I know that sounds like a lot. The whole point is you don't want too much information on each slide. So here's the distinction most people don't tell you. When you are doing a webinar where you're going to sell in that webinar, and essentially you probably have their attention, real attention for an hour, if that, you want to move through those slides like this. Boom, boom, boom. You want to keep their attention. You want to keep your energy up. You want to make sure that they're like tracking with you and not going to their phone into another window on their computer. That's a webinar. When you're teaching inside of a digital course, you could slow that pace down. You could add more content to a slide. You can stay on a slide longer. Teaching something in a paid course is a different type of style of teaching than on a webinar. A webinar is more fast-paced, more high energy, more like bringing them back, making sure you keep them there. And so 80 slides or more allows you to go through those slides really fast. Less on the slides, but more movement and excitement in a webinar. Now, you can use Canva, PowerPoint, Keynote. I am still old school in the sense of I only use Keynote. It's what I know and love. But if I were starting over, I just use Canva. Canva is so much easier. They have all these slide templates, way faster. It looks just as good. So if I weren't old school, I'd be using Canva. So you're creating no less than 80 slides for an hour-long webinar so that you can keep their attention and keep the energy up and the pace a little bit faster than if you were to teach it inside of a course. So with this in mind, remember your slides don't have to be super robust. Some of my slides simply have a picture of me on it, and then just to add like a personal touch so my audience feels like they know me a little bit better. And then maybe I'm riffing off of what I wanted to say on that slide, or other slides simply have a quote maybe or a word. And listen, this is another distinction most people don't talk about. The slides are as much for me as the presenter as they are for my audience. Because I'm going to practice the webinar, I'm going to do it multiple times. That's the thing. If let's say you're doing a launch for 10 days, I want you to do 3 or 4 webinars, all the exact same webinar, just different dates and times. And you're going to get better and better each time you do it. But the slides are as much for me. I don't read a script. I don't even have notes anymore. I see the slide and I know what I want to talk about for that slide. So I call it riffing. I'm riffing off of it, but I've also been doing this for 15 years. So I think the best bet, not to read any kind of script, but just to have quick like bullet points and presenter notes under each slide. So you remember what you want to say, but you're not reading them word for word. That will allow you to be more casual and off the cuff. You just need to be careful not to be too long-winded because you'll never get to that 45-minute mark on time if you just go on and on and on. Plus, no one wants to hear you go on and on and on. Speaking of, why don't I move on? Okay, so for this idea of preparing your slides, I want to talk to you about the last slide in your presentation. And this is the one that will transition you into the Q&A portion of your webinar. So you've gone through the possibility, the path, and the promotion. So you've promoted your course, and now it's time to get into the Q&A. Right before you go into that Q&A, if you have a special slide there, I'm going to tell you about it. This could help you with more sales. So I believe that staying on after your webinar to answer questions live is so important, because if an attendee has stayed until the end, they probably are interested in buying your course. They want to know more about the offer. They might be nervous to spend the money, but they're intrigued. If they are there an hour or even more into your presentation and they're staying for the Q&A, I feel like they are the most important people right now. After you wrap up the slides that you present your offer, you'll have one slide that simply says Q&A on it. Let the attendees know this is their chance to ask questions about the content you shared and the offer you presented. I like to then take that slide down and go full screen with my face. So it will say something like Q&A, and I might even have a timer that will go away because then I'm going to go full screen. But at least they know, like, for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be answering questions. So they see a timer, but then I go full screen. We call it direct to camera, DTC, because I just feel as though while I'm answering questions about my course, they should see my face. To have that connection with me, know that I can be trusted. There's body language that's going to be important at this point. So I haven't always done it that way, but over the last few years, absolutely. Now, a little tip for the Q&A. I always recommend having a few questions prepared beforehand. You don't need to make a big deal about the fact that they're pre-planned. I usually say something like this. All right, let's kick off the Q&A with a few common questions I often receive. While I go through these, feel free to pop your own question into the chat box, and I'll make sure to address those as well. And then I just go to 2 or 3 questions I've already prepared. Some typical questions that you might want to prepare is, how long will it take to complete the program? Do I get lifetime access to this course? If I need help during the course, will I be able to reach out to you for guidance? These tend to be questions I get asked all the time. Also, Q&A, this is so important. If you're multitasking, come back to me. I could do, inside DCA, I have an entire lesson just about the Q&A, because you can make so much money with a Q&A, meaning sell so many of your courses or membership spots if you do the Q&A right, because these people are genuinely interested. And one of the things is that you do not need to answer every question that comes into the Q&A. And I want questions related to my course. I'm not there. I just spent an hour-long webinar, if not longer, teaching, offering value, guiding people. And so I'm not going to answer questions that are either unrelated to the course or are just in general marketing questions, or really specific questions that are for this one person. Like, I have a course about XYZ and I need to know what my module should be like if I'm selling to women over 50, like way too specific. You have to think, answer questions that the greater good of the audience will get value from. So my little trick is to have a tracker, a Google Doc, where someone on my team, the first time I did this, it was my best friend Gigi, so it doesn't even have to be a team member, but someone on your team can look at the questions, copy and paste the best questions, put them into a Google Doc and you're only looking at a Google Doc. When you're like trying to sift through chat and you're like, let me see, let me find a question. Okay. And then it's like dead silence. Well, it's just awkward, right? A silence is awkward in that respect during a Q&A. So I just know if it's in my Q&A tracker, it's been vetted by my team and they have like a minute to vet it. They've got to go fast, but still. So don't think you have to answer every question. And I would choose questions that relate back to your course. Every question you ask, you don't want to say, oh, yeah, I teach that in module 5 by my course. Or, oh, I get into detail about that in the first training. So pay close attention to module 1. Or you don't want to just do it like that. You want to give value, but then at the end of your question, you could say, and I go into that even more detail in module 5. So you can always relate it back to the course, but still give value in your answers. So again, tackling these questions can help clear up any doubts or frustration that people are feeling and not sure if they're the right fit, or encourage more participation from the audience. If you're answering questions and they have even more questions related to that, it's going to get that chat going. So I'm all about pre-planned questions. I feel like they're a lifesaver, especially when you're brand new. And so make sure to do that and it will get the conversation going. And I actually want to talk about one more thing really quick before I move on. If your webinar presentations don't have a lot of attendees yet, remember every single online entrepreneur started there, including myself. It's all part of the process. I think I'm going to guess 15 people were on my very first webinar. And by webinar, I mean teleconference. So I'm so old in this industry that I actually used to do just calls. Like people would get on, I forget what the technology was called, but they just heard my voice and that's all. And I would like have to say the URL of where to go to buy it and they'd have to type it in. They wouldn't even see it on a screen. I didn't have any slides. And I think 15 people were on my very first one. So just know that it's okay when you're starting off small. That's why predetermined questions are so very important. And it gets easier. It gets easier the more you do it. And over time, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people on, but you got to be patient, my grasshopper. Just be patient and it will happen. I promise. Which brings us to our next topic, transforming your webinars from one-time events to lasting resources in your launch with a well-crafted replay strategy. So keep in mind, there's no right answer to how you develop your replay strategy, and it's always something I continue to experiment with in my business. So for example, I know people are busy, especially my ideal customer avatar. Many still work full-time jobs and are building their businesses on the side. I'm very aware that my audience might also have a family, so it's not always realistic to expect them to show up to a live webinar in the middle of their workday or even in the evening. So if they register for my webinar and can't make it live, I still want them to get the valuable information they're seeking. This is why I typically offer a 24-hour or sometimes longer replay. But here's the thing. Most people won't watch your replay. So do not bank on this. Spend more time and energy to get them on live. I like to do a special gift or bonus for those that attend live. And I'll say, if you attend live in the first 5 minutes, I'll tell you how to get your hands on my special bonus called XYZ. So I will put that in the marketing messages in their emails before the webinar. So I do a really big effort to get people on live. Now, when I'm promoting the webinar, I'm also not talking about the replay. Some people will ask in the comments, will there be a replay? And we will say yes. But the key here is to make it a limited time replay. Give them a deadline to watch this replay in a very short period of time in order to make it happen. I have done 24-hour replay. I've done 48 hours. I've done 72 hours, usually nothing more than that. And to do this, I'll download the recording. I'll upload it to a web page where it can be played at any time when people show up. And then I'll send out a short and sweet email with a link to that replay and let them know there is a timeline. And on the replay page, I typically will have a timer that says you have this amount of time left to actually watch the replay. Now, you can send the same email to all the people who also registered, but I typically have two different versions of a replay email. The first version is for people who attended live, letting them know if they want to review any part of it, here's the replay. But most of that email is about my course that I sold on the webinar because they're aware of the course now. So I might have like a quick mention of the replay, but I'm not going to focus on that. But the second version of the email is everyone who registered but didn't attend, because I can look in the the data of whatever platform I'm using, who attended and who didn't. And I'll send an email out to those who did not attend and make it more about the replay and not really mention the course that I sold on it. I'll do that in the follow-up email. So if you can segment, do so. If for some reason you can't figure out who attended live and who didn't, just send out one email. And in that case, I would have to make it about the replay and about the course. And I would downplay the replay and probably make it more about the course. Now, while I love being able to offer my community the opportunity to consume my content when it works best for them, again, I'm a firm believer in the power of live experiences. And I know that most people will not catch the replay. They'll have a great intention to do so, but life gets in the way. So also there's something incredibly special about the energy and engagement when you're live. You've all experienced it, right? I've observed this over and over again. You just don't get that same energy on a replay. It's interesting. I have a evergreen product for my List Builder Society program. So that's a webinar that runs every single day. And the number one question we get while it's running is this live? Is this live? Is this live? Like the comments, that's all it says. People want to know that you're live because they assign a higher perceived value when it's live. And so that's why you really want to bank on that live energy and do all you can to get as many people there live. In my latest Digital Course Academy launch, I decided to experiment with this concept of live, and I introduced a surprise live training session in addition to my webinar. So it was different. It was like a 30-minute training near the end of my launch, and I did not offer a replay. I want to make it clear, I'm not suggesting you implement what I'm about to share with you right now. Remember, I've been doing this for a very long time. So if you're in the beginning stages of your business, there's no need to add extra live events to your launches. And as always, start simple, get fancy later. But the purpose of sharing this extra live event I'm about to talk about is to illustrate the value of trying new things in your business and in your launches and staying curious and not getting stuck in your old ways. Because when you keep doing the same thing over and over again, there's going to be a point that it just doesn't work as well. And you've got to expand and go beyond what you've been doing. So that's what I did. So basically what I did is I created a 30-minute training after all my webinars were done. So this was in addition to my webinars. And all my webinars were over. We were in the last few days of the launch, and I created this 30-minute training called the No Business Plan Business, the exact blueprint for starting an online business with one digital course. So I made it clear on the registration page that this was a live event. There was no replay. And the idea was similar to like a live concert. If you can't make it in person to see the band play, then there's no point in getting the ticket, essentially. So this strategy helped me achieve one of the highest attendance rates in my business history. 73% of the people who registered showed up. On average, you're going to get about 20 to 30% on a webinar. So this was very, very different. And it was also just 30 minutes, which it's not as powerful as a webinar. I would never use this to replace a webinar. I think you need the time on the webinar for the people that are genuinely interested to understand, make that mindset shift or make that new decision and then make the decision to buy. So I'm not replacing this with a webinar. I would never do that, but it's in addition to. And so I did this 30-minute training. I went over the 30 minutes for a Q&A, but the training was over in 30 minutes and no replay. And it definitely did convert. Now, a downside I saw was that I did have fewer overall registrations on the front end than I typically see. So if I get overall like 30,000 people to sign up for my webinars, across like 4 or 5 webinars. For this one, I might have got like 2,000 people to show up for this 30-minute training, but they were quality because they had been hearing about digital courses through the pre-launch and then the whole launch. So very warm audience that were probably on the fence to buy my course. They showed up for this. But I had a hunch this would happen because I made it clear, if you can't make it live, then don't sign up for this. Now, since this training was delivered in the last couple days of the launch, I was okay with fewer registrants because my goal was to maximize engagement through my live training, and I knew it would be a warmer audience. So I love having this data now to guide me in future launches. If I ever want to try something similar again, I know what to expect and when the best time to use the strategy is, which is near the end of the launch. And one major reason I don't see myself doing this regularly is my commitment to accessibility. I want to honor the people that live in different time zones. That's another huge con to this, where if you're like 13 hours different than where I am in Tennessee, it's just not going to make sense for you. And when people wrote in, I'm going to tell you a little secret. If someone wrote in and said, look, this webinar is at 3 a.m. my time, I would really like to be there. I'm interested in your course. I'd like to know more. We had a special secret backdoor link. And here's the thing. You might agree or disagree with this. I don't care. This is what I believe for my own business. If you care enough to send me a message to my help desk to say, I'm very interested, but it's 3 a.m. for me. If you care that much, I'm going to make an exception for you. And so we always make little exceptions for the people that are showing up and wanting to be a part of what we're doing. So I did definitely do that. But if you didn't write in, then we did not make an exception. So take it or leave it, but that's just the way I do it. Okay, so I know we've covered a lot of ground today, but here's the great news. You don't have to go through all of these preparation strategies alone. In the world of online business, you have the magical opportunity to leverage the skills of a virtual assistant. So I want to end today by giving you 3 ideas of tasks and action items that are especially helpful to give to a VA when preparing for a webinar. So pay attention. If you've got a little help or you're planning on hiring a VA and you want to do webinars, these are 3 things that they can do. First up, VAs are perfect to offer webinar rehearsal feedback. So have your virtual assistant proofread your slides and then do a practice run, have them attend it, have them take notes, not interrupt you while you're doing it. It's really important you go through your whole webinar without stopping as a practice round. Pain in the butt? Yes, so worth it. But have them take notes and then give you feedback afterwards. What was confusing? What didn't flow? What did they love? Also, your VA can help with your webinar engagement. They can welcome guests in the chat. They can answer questions that are coming in, like, is there a replay? That's the number one question you're going to get in your live chat. Offer technical support if there's going to be any problem. Make sure that you know if there's any issues, like if people can't hear you all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to get a message from my VA. I always just do it through text. We have a text channel open up on my phone during a live webinar that a few people on my team are on. And I know if I get a text during a webinar, I have to pay attention, something's going on. And so that just allows me to just know my team's got my back. So I love a really great VA getting into the chat, talking to people, answering questions, encouraging them to answer things, welcoming them, all that kind of thing. And just recognizing them. I think it goes a long way. And last, maybe one of the most important roles a virtual assistant can help with is that live Q&A management. So I already mentioned this, but this portion of the webinar can be overwhelming on your own. I don't want you hunting and pecking in a chat, trying to find questions. Let your VA collect them, organize them in that Google Doc. You open the Google Doc during the Q&A. Boom, you're streamlined, you're clear, you're focused. You're not trying to look in all these different places. It makes a huge difference. Okay, so now that we've explored how a virtual assistant can significantly ease the pressure during your webinar, let's shift our focus because I have a few concluding thoughts that I want to share. First, I want you to remember the success of your webinar doesn't just depend on the strategies we covered today, but also on the belief that you have in your product or service and your ability to deliver value online. And believe me when I say you have everything it takes to create a wildly successful webinar. If someone like me, a self-described introvert, can do it, then you can too. It just took me a while to kind of get my sea legs with webinars, like to really feel solid in them. But that's just practice makes perfect. And sorry to say, you'll never be perfect at webinars. I don't know anyone who is, but you will get a whole lot better over time. And let me give you a little secret about how I bring my A game during a webinar. And don't laugh because this is very, very true. For every single webinar, a few minutes before I go live, you'll find me playing my go song. It's so cliche. It's Journeys Don't Stop Believin'. And there's a story to that. When I used to work for Tony Robbins, it was like the song we played on the way to the venue to get everyone hyped up. So it's just always meaningful to me. And it brings up so much energy the minute I hear those first chords. But all you need to think is, what is your go song? Like, it's go time. And just always make it this one same song, have it on your phone. And even if it's just you sitting there at your desk alone, play it. I used to get up and dance, is true. I remember like 12 years ago being in my little condo in Carlsbad. No one was helping me with webinars. It was just me, myself, and I. I'd play Journey and I would stand up and I'd just like dance it out just to get the energy in my body. But then I did that a few years ago, right before my webinar started, and I sat down and I was so flustered. For some reason, I couldn't think like, what am I supposed to say in the beginning? I was just like not focused. So I don't get up and dance anymore right before because I'm just maybe getting older and I need to sit and focus. But I do play the song and it is in my body. Every cell in my body feels the excitement. So it works. I also say that thing that I mentioned earlier. No matter if they buy or not, they walk away today feeling inspired, excited, and driven to take action. So that part is really important. I say it a few times before I go live. And while the song and the mantra works for me, I realize it might not be the perfect combination for you. So all I want you to do is choose, what does your pre-webinar ritual look like? And then it would be really fun if you DM'd me on Instagram and told me, like, I'd love to know, like, what do you do before a webinar, or what will you do to just get you in the zone? I would love to know what that is. Or if you already have your go-to song, let me know what your song is. Okay, I know I covered a lot here. And I am very passionate about webinars. I think I didn't mention this in the beginning enough, but some people love to say, like, do webinars really work anymore? So many of my peers, I can't even think of one of my peers, like successful entrepreneurs that sell courses or memberships or masterminds or group coaching, that do not use a form of a webinar. Now, a lot of the times I'll do a boot camp for like 7 days that leads into a webinar. So I've experimented with adding things to the mix, but no matter what, you strip it all down, there's always a webinar. And it is such a great skill to perfect. It's worth your time. And I love the idea of practice. I hate to say it, practice makes perfect. I already said you'll never be perfect, but you get the point. It just takes time. I have done hundreds and hundreds of webinars and it has served me well. So don't be hesitant to just get started. It will get easier. And to help you seamlessly transform all the ideas we discussed today into concrete actions in a high converting webinar that makes you a bunch of sales, go get my free resource. It's called My Webinar Blueprint, a step-by-step guide from promise to promotion. And you can find it at amyporterfield.com/659. All right, my friend, I cannot wait to see what you create. I can't wait for you to do your webinars, and make sure to let me know how they go. I'm just at Amy Porterfield on Instagram. Thanks so very much for connecting with me, and I can't wait to see you soon. Bye for now.